talk about Creed. The magic of Creed. Based on that sigh, I don't think you like the movies.
You know, I'm torn on how to read this movie. You know, the premise of this movie is redemption versus redemption. But to me, that premise is flawed. Because the idea of redemption versus redemption, it's Creed versus Drago. But Creed's redemption is he wants redemption on the guy who killed his father. Drago's redemption is to
get the love of the people.
Not even basically he lost everything, right? Or his father lost everything after the fight. But Drago's problem isn't with Creed, it's with Rocky. And Creed's problem isn't with
Drago is the father.
Exactly. So to me, the premise itself is flawed because they both can't get it. To me, it's just lazy fan fiction. The whole premise of this movie. So that's where I really start with it.
That's strange. For me, I feel there's redemption versus redemption, but they're both very old. Drago can't come back into the ring and get his redemption. So the classic move for him is to put it on his son. We've seen so many failed athletes try to put it on their sons to become the better athlete, right?
But isn't it still, because we see in Victor Drago, he's living in Kiev. He's not allowed in Russia. His mom has not just abandoned Ivan, the mom abandoned him.
Yeah.
Even when they go back into, and again, watch your spoilers here if you're still with us and you want to see Creed 2. But when he starts winning matches and is invited back to Russia, he wants no part of it.
100%. He sees these people as people that abandoned him.
So for me, Victor Drago, like Ivan Drago, does want revenge on Rocky. Because Rocky didn't just ruin Ivan's life, he ruined Victor's life.
That's a very good point. The way I see it is they want revenge on Rocky, but who's the closest thing to Rocky now? His son's not a boxer. His wife has passed away. Mm-hmm. The last person that he put everything into is Creed, right? That's his guy. That's his kid. It's like his son. We see, another spoiler alert, Creed has a baby, and he's the godfather of that baby. So They're like a close-knit family. So what's the next best thing to get revenge on Rocky? Beat up his protege. So that's why I feel that it's fair for the redemption versus redemption, because he can't get revenge on Rocky. What's he gonna do? Go out and just murder him in cold blood? Right?
Yeah,
He wants to break his character. We see this time and time again. How many times? I'm gonna do an impersonation. Break him. That's how he kept saying it, right?
No, that's fair.
What he wanted to do.
But now, you obviously watched the movie, but when I'm watching the movie,
no, I didn't watch the movie.
To me, the more interesting story isn't on Adonis or Rocky. The Dragos, to me, are the much more interesting story that I wanted more of. I don't feel like in Rocky 4, Ivan's the bad guy, right? He's the guy on the steroids. We're in the Cold War. The Soviets are the bad guys. There is not a redeeming. Ivan kills Apollo. There's no
in cold blood.
In cold blood, literally. There's no redeeming quality behind Ivan that you're supposed to feel for. But
even in Creed 2, he's still an asshole.
Is he though? But I don't feel like that, because at the beginning of the movie, he doesn't have very much dialogue. The beginning of the movie, he wakes his son up just to train him, and we find out his son's a good boxer, built like a tank. They work in some kind of physical manual labor. They got nothing. They're in the slums. And then they come to Philadelphia. They're going to challenge Adonis. And, we see them go through the Rocky statue. They go into, Ivan goes into Adrian's.
The restaurant.
And he's just sitting there. And he sits with Rocky, and he's not malice towards Rocky. He just says, you took everything from me. That night, my life, you're a hero. I'm a dog being thrown out by everyone. And lost my wife, lost my country, lost everything. Aren't you emotionally being like, oh, I feel bad for that guy?
I don't feel bad for him, because I'm going to tell you one thing, because look what he did to Creed, right? He took someone's life away in the ring. So what I would say versus that is, okay, you did lose everything, but you're still alive. You still have a life. when he killed Creed, he left the son behind and a woman to fend on his own, right? And the mother. So I don't feel as bad for Drago as I would.
Okay, but did Drago? It's a Cold War mentality here. Drago was trained from pretty much at like 12 years old to be an elite boxer, to punish. He's doing this not for himself. He's doing this for his country, right? Drago is not, and this is again a Cold War mentality. My history background maybe helps me a little bit here with this, but the Cold War mentality of like you're born to box. You don't get an education anywhere else. You're a boxer, and he let down the Soviet Union. He says it himself. I lost. When his son gets angry, like, why are you back with all these with Russians that cast you out? He's like, he flat said, I lost. It was on me. Like, don't you like throughout the movie? I have pathos. I have feelings towards Ivan. Like I'm like, oh, that I didn't have in Rocky 4. Rocky 4 beat him, beat him.
He killed Apollo.
I honestly thought I'm normally pretty good at reading movies, and I'm going to admit to all of you guys that I called this wrong. I thought Victor was winning this. I thought that Adonis was going to lose in the final fight, and that Victor was going to win to get back some of his, his life. This isn't the Cold War anymore. Let's keep this out of politics, but there isn't this idea of East versus West like Burning Heart gave us in Rocky 4. So I thought much of this movie we see like this theme of throwing in the towel. We see it at beginning with Rocky. He said he should have. He regrets not throwing in that towel. And then we see the trainer in the first match between Adonis and Victor, where the trainer should have thrown in the towel because clearly Adonis was done.
Yeah, he was not. That was a beatdown.
And we see Rocky in Adrian's being like, throw in the towel, stop the fight, throw in the towel. And then we see Adonis getting his priorities changed. You brought up his daughter. Like, his priorities have changed. He wants to be... He has a different perspective. He learns why he gets into boxing. And then even in the second last round of the final fight, Rocky's like, do you want to throw in the towel? You call it, kid. Again, going right to Rocky 4, his regret not throwing in the towel. I was just like, there it is. He's throwing in the towel. Victor wins. Everyone kind of gets what they want from it. Adonis put up a brave fight. He kind of won a little cheekily with a little extra hold.
Yeah.
But everyone kind of wins. That's how I thought it was going to end. The way it ended, it surprised me, I'll be honest. And again, now the Dragos, yes, they found each other, but they're still outcasts. They're still not really welcome in the boxing community. They're not welcome in Russia. They're just together now, and I didn't feel like that was I didn't feel that was beneficial.
The ideal ending, right?
No, not for them. And I was more interested in their story. Like when I saw the Russian parts or the Ukrainian parts, I was more engaged than I was when I was watching Adonis in this movie.
I'm not gonna lie, I was engaged in those parts, but I also was engaged in the Adonis parts as well. I find this movie is more like a rehash of Rocky 3 and Rocky 4 mixed into one. So the first half is Rocky 3. He's battling his father's legacy. He wants to live up to his father's name. He doesn't know what's going on. All of a sudden, a brand new challenger with the name of Drago, he's whipping guys. He's like, I'm ready. It came from nothing. Clubber Lang got out of jail. It came from nothing, ready to fight him, right?
Nothing to lose, right? That's exactly what Mickey tells Rocky. Nothing to lose.
Right? So Rocky already experienced this with Clubber Lang. So after that first fight, he gets rocked, right? And then we move on to the next fight. This is when it goes to Creed versus Drago, right? Because he almost was killed, as we can see. He got mangled that first fight. Then it moves on to Rocky 4, where he's focusing on his family. He's getting his focus right. He's starting to be like, this isn't my father's legacy. This is my own legacy. I'm going to have to do this for me. Because Rocky asks him, why are you fighting? He didn't know why he was fighting. If you don't know why you're fighting, you're probably not going to win. And this is a little thing that I wanted to add at the beginning. I watched a Mike Tyson documentary a long time ago about boxing, where like he would always stare down his opponents, and if his opponents looked away, they would lose. If you watch the first fight, Creed is staring at each other. Then Creed looks away to look at Drago's dad, right? and that's when I'm like, oh, Creed's losing this fight. Like, that's how I knew immediately. And then the second fight, they're staring down each other in the second fight, and then Creed, spoiler alert, Creed wins. So I feel like the second half is more Rocky 4. That's the more.
Oh, I definitely think it's a rehash, which is why, for me, the Dragos interested me more, right? Because the other part of the story was just right? a rehash of another movie. Whereas the Dragos, that's the real, to me, that was the real redemption story. Getting back into your country.
I feel like they can still make a living off boxing, right? It's not the end for Drago now. Like, sure he doesn't have the love of his people, but he can still go into like Victor Drago. He's not a bad fighter. We saw him just manhandle I don't know how many opponents, and he almost manhandled I almost said Apollo Creed, Adonis Creed, multiple times in that round. Like, we saw that if he didn't knock him out, Adonis was losing that fight. Right?
Well, and I also want to touch upon that a little bit.
Well, not knock him out.
Victor was winning. Right, it was the last round of this fight, and Victor had won probably 7 of the 9 rounds, maybe 6 of the 9 rounds. So Adonis comes out guns blazing. It was great, fantastic. Knocked Victor down twice, beating him up. Victor could barely protect himself. There's maybe about I'd like to time that sequence again, but there's maybe 20 seconds left in that match. Victor's won the match. Yet Ivan walks up and throws in the towel. Victor didn't take a beating at all. Like Adonis spent 9 rounds getting beaten, ribs broken for sure.
Ribs broken
again. And Victor's hurting, probably gonna have a concussion at the end of it. But you throw in the towel when you're probably still gonna win. And Victor's, you could see he's upset about it, and Ivan's like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, showing that he loves the son. But I feel like Ivan's character switches. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, and I get why he does it, but it doesn't make sense because he's winning the match. If he had been losing the match, if the situation was reversed and Adonis had won 6 of the 9 rounds, and Victor was winning this round, and he needed to knock him out to win. Okay, stay in it or throw it out because you're going to lose the match anyway. But if you're going to win the match, finish him off.
It may have been. I feel that one of the issues would have been maybe the first Rocky, where Apollo gets saved by the bell, and they kept saying, "Oh well, Adonis would have won. He would have whooped you, right?" And then they had to do a rematch. So maybe Dolph Lundgren's character, Ivan Drago, didn't believe that if a third match was to happen, if he would win that fight. Maybe that was the case. I'm just throwing something out here just to try and explain to you.
Maybe.
I'm not saying that's the absolute truth, but
I think a big part of the reason why Adonis wins the match or is better in the later rounds is the same reason Rocky beat Drago in 4, right? These guys are built machines that go 4 rounds.
Yeah, they're sluggers like Mike Tyson.
Yeah, you make it into a marathon. They're not equipped to handle it.
Yeah.
But again, I watched the movie and I didn't see a way that Adonis could win, except for what they did is they turned Adonis into Rocky. Right? He just he just kept taking hits and keep chugging along, which is a Rocky thing, and I didn't particularly like that either.
But we saw him training for taking hits, though. Remember,
that's still a Rocky
thing. He was getting hit by like a tire. I don't know how hard that hurts. That was the weirdest training sequence I've ever seen in my life.
No, it was.
But we saw him look like he was beaten. Like, we saw him collapse. That was when he asked me, like, I think he's losing this fight, and I'm like, I don't think so.
I thought he was losing because of the towel talk, right? Yeah. I really thought that was a big reason. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I dislike this movie. Like, I like the character Adonis. I think he's a great character. I think he adds to it. I do have a comment about him in a minute. I love Bianca. I think her character is fantastic.
Yeah, Bianca is one of the better characters in the movie.
The training montages are good. I personally think that the Dragos are more interesting.
I like the filming of the fights. Can we just add that the fight?
That was my last
great.
Thing. The slow motion, like headshots.
It's such
so
a
good.
difference from the original Rocky. You just see it get more and more Hollywood each time.
Well, you got really the Matrix to thank for that, right? The slow motion filming, right? That's really from the Matrix. And Rocky Balboa, which you put out before I went to see it in the 2 Creed movies, they're post Matrix, so they have that slow motion. You can really get into it.
Looks much more like a more real fight. I'm probably people that are fighters are probably like, no, it does not. But to me, that doesn't know anything about fighting, it definitely does.
You know what? It's more interesting. I'll say that because you can, instead of filming the whole 30 minutes, you just film the scenes where they punch each other in the head or the ribs.
They punch a bit and then they're mates.
But okay, so my biggest pet peeve with the movie isn't necessarily the movie itself. I don't like movies that destroy the source material, and I thought that we talked a little bit about changing characters in the middle of the movie, but they also changed characters that already were established. I'm going to look at Rocky as my example, and I think the Creed movies do a horrible job with Rocky. Not in terms of how his dialogue, not in terms of things he would say or do, but things that have been established by him. And I'll give you an example. Rocky Balboa was all about bringing Rocky and his son close together. So we know in Rocky Balboa that him and his son had a rocky relationship. Mm-hmm. And that movie was about Robert training with Rocky and getting past the shadow of his father. We see these great speeches about it's not how hard or how life knocks you down, it's about how you get back up. Fantastic speeches. Mm-hmm. And as soon as Creed happens, it's like, oh well, Rocky and his son still never talked. What? And I get it. It helps the plot because you don't have to explain where Robert is when he has cancer in the first movie or where he is in this movie. You don't have to put Paulie in the movie, so just kill him off. It makes it easier, right? So that you choose to do those things, but you heard it, and it comes to me like the Die Hard, right? You have John and his wife in the first movie. They struggle to get together, right? They're having their rocky relationship, but they get them together. So in the second movie, they're together again, but then again, break them up in the third movie. Only the last scene, right? Samuel L. Jackson tells John, call your wife, and that's what he does. He calls his wife. They're getting back together, and then in Die Hard 4, they're divorced again. Like, because you don't want to bring her back, that's your thing. Let's kill people off. Let's move them apart, even though we just spent a movie seeing them get together. It's a pet peeve of mine. It's a cheap trick that movies do, and Creed did it.
Yeah, I know you hate that. What's another movie that happened and you're like, I cannot stand that movie?
There's so
Jurassic
many.
World. There's one.
Don't even get me started on that. Don't get me started on that.
Spoiler alert for Jurassic World, by the way.
Yeah, we haven't say anything. The other, this is where I'd like to get your perspective on, because I really shouldn't be, not really something for me. But the other aspect of it is ruining Apollo's character. It's been a while since I've seen the Rocky movies, the first 4. But what I remember about Apollo, he's a really good family man. Really cared about his kids, really cared about his wife. And we find out right at the beginning of the first Creed movie that he cheated on his wife, had a kid out of wedlock. Do you not think that's a bad stereotype for African Americans? It's a stereotype that we see all the time. And now you have this movie, instead of having just Creed's son, you choose to have, this child out of wedlock. Doesn't that hurt the African American stereotype?
Yeah, that's a very big point that you added. I feel the way that kind of has been tackled, it's not the best way to tackle it. As I've seen that movie before, Apollo he's a showman, he flaunts everything, but at the end of the day, he was a family man, right? That's one aspect of the film I do not agree with. It really easily could have just been his regular son. It didn't have to be his son out of wedlock.
So yeah, to me, changing that character, that from Apollo, changing Rocky's character, it's hard to get on board with the Creed movies. Even though I really like Adonis, why couldn't it be some?
It could have been Adonis, but Adonis has an actual son.
Yeah, I just think it would have been better. I don't understand why.
100%.
All right, one more question about Creed before I ask you if we're missing anything. The one thing I would ask you is this a Creed movie, or is this still a Rocky movie? Like, who do you think's the center character? Is it Adonis or is it Rocky?
I want to say this is a Rocky Universe movie with Creed as the main character. That's what I'm gonna try and state it as, because it spends more time about him facing his father's legacy, right? A lot of this parts of Sylvester Stallone's parts is Rocky's. A lot of side plot things. We even spent a couple of scenes without him, where he's like, "I'm not coming with you to."
Can I tell you that's why I think it's a Rocky movie? Because what happened when Rocky didn't show up?
He lost.
Did he lose? Is that how you describe that boxing match?
I thought the same thing. I'm like, wow. So every time Rocky's not there, you can't win a fight, right?
Because it's a Rocky movie. Rocky has to train him, right? He becomes a trainer. He takes the role. It's about his relationship with his son again, right? Kind of one of the last scenes. He talks to Adrian, right? He's kind of I don't know. I feel like it's again Creed versus Drago. Rocky's got to be in there. I don't know. I feel like at the end of the day, one of the criticisms that I have, it's still a Rocky movie instead of being a Creed movie. And again, this maybe comes to a lot of aspects to the universe.
It could be I don't see it as that way, but I can understand where you're coming from as a Rocky movie. But I just want to say the plot really revolved around Creed, right? Sure, he wasn't there for the fight, but like it was all about Creed the whole time, right? He was about him having his family,
and Rocky being the mentor. Absolutely,
Rocky being his mentor. A lot of things. I just want to add a side note that I did not realize that was Apollo Creed's trainer's son that was training him. I was like, I didn't like.
But he was in the first one too.
He was in the first one. I didn't know that. I was just like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Another character they killed from the original to make this movie. Just gonna throw that out there. Another fantastic character who looked very healthy in Rocky Balboa too.
My favorite trainer though is Mickey.
Oh,
you gotta go, Rock. What are you doing, Rock?
Can we also talk about how Michael B. Jordan, how jacked he was in that movie?
He was jacked, but Victor Drago made him look like a little boy.
Yeah, but that's because he's bigger and taller. But like, I mean, when Jordan's wearing shirts, like all you see are the muscles protruding everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, he was jacked in Black Panther too as well.
He was, but I don't know what. Maybe it's because it's
Creed. It's because the sweating.
I know,
just the eating.
Yeah,
the working out for a boxing movie is much more harder than I guess a Marvel movie.
Yeah, in the Marvel movie too, he's the villain, so you're not really looking at that. Yeah. But maybe I don't know. I just found him like that. I thought I was really impressed with that. But.
Yeah, I was like, he's jacked. What's his workout? I need to know what he's eating.
I'd love to know what he's eating, but I don't think I would ever change my diet towards that.
I got a big, pregnant little belly down here, so I need to work on that.
Yeah, right? Some more cookies and cupcakes into my system. I'm sure he wasn't eating any of that.
100%, right?
Pizza, hamburgers, is probably eating that. No.
Anything fried for me. No stereotype.
Anything else you want to talk about in Creed?
No, I feel like that's everything.
So overall, what would you say about it? Like, would you say good, bad, medium, fantastic?
It's not a great movie, but I really like it. That's my.
I just say average. I give it like a 6 out of 10. Like I know I probably spent more time criticizing it. You're probably like I'm surprised you said it was so high. It wasn't. My criticisms are more along the lines of the Rocky franchise and the old aspects than it as its own movie. Continuity is important to me. Again, continuity kind of goes with plot.
Right, yeah, and a lot of movies are trying to build a universe, right? So Rocky jumped the ship. We saw the failed Dark Universe with Universal and the DC crap you.
More on that in December when Aquaman comes out.
Okay, perfect.